Hey guys, and welcome back to Making Spirituality Real with Jade. Today we have an episode that I'm really excited about. It's an episode in my Peace of Mind series that was inspired by an article that I found on my native Polish website. The article is inspired by a YouTuber, ironically. However, the YouTuber themselves is from Czech Republic. So I thought that it would be very good to bring this content to the English side of YouTube so that more people could see and understand it. And also, I'm not going to just quote what they're saying, I'm just going to give my commentary and say how it ties to my own beliefs about the topic, which was surprisingly honestly really similar, like for two different people who have never met, like the ideas really were in sync. The question that the author of the original channel, through the article that I've read, and me and many other spiritual YouTubers are trying to answer for people who are looking for those answers online, is how to beat the matrix. I'm not sure if beat is the right word, but I've seen it used in this context, so I guess it's appropriate. And I'm going to quote only these parts that I see as relevant, because there are some there that I kind of did not fully agree with. I'm just going to leave them. The author is supposed to be channeling these messages intuitively and calls themselves an indigo, and as someone who is pretty intuitive myself, I completely feel them on the similarities between our own impressions of this universe. So I'm going to just stick to that and not even comment on those things that I feel like a little bit too out there, because this article also talks about the so-called golden age of humanity, and I kind of think that sure, if it's true, but I think it can kind of be a trap of just sitting and waiting and thinking that the golden age is just around the corner and not really making any changes in our actual physical lives. So I would actually like to skip the whole part where the author speaks about humanity entering its golden age, and I would like to discuss the structure of the matrix and the methods for liberation that they are presenting in their article. So if you see me looking sideways, this is the notes, this is the article, because I have to reference it, and of course I don't know it by heart. I need to reference it to talk to you guys about how I agree with what the article is saying, and how I may disagree on some parts. And and just to reference the exact quotes to show the similarity, or even translate it, because the article is written in a slightly broken language, since the original is Czech and not English, so I also have to adjust the language for you guys so it's understandable. But we'll make this work out somehow. Okay, so first, at the beginning of this article, before the channel message given by the indigo, is a quote that I fully and 100% agree with, and I've been living by it for years by now, ever since my spiritual awakening was triggered years ago. I have been using this thought as a mantra on how to live by. And the quote is to ask oneself the most important question, and to answer it at the same time is simple. Why was I born, and what am I looking for on this planet? And this is something that, it may sound simple, and you might think that that all of us are asking themselves why we were born and what we were looking in this physical life. But there are just so many people that completely go through their lives with blinders on and don't question their existence at all. So I think already even this quote is the first hack on how to free yourself from the matrix, because if you start questioning why were you born and what is your purpose, and thinking that you have a purpose, this is already the first step towards really growing into your spirituality and really freeing yourself mentally and spiritually from whatever forces internal to you, because I believe that we're also our own prisoners for the most part. So this is really something that's going to help you actually reconnect to the truth of yourself, and thus to the truth of the universe. So if we're talking about freeing ourselves from the matrix, the first fundamental question we can ask ourselves is why we were even born on this planet in the first place, and what do we do here most often on the daily. If you're an astrologer, and if you know something about astrology, you could probably look to planets, signs aspecting your midheaven. Like midheaven is viewed as this point of aspiration, the highest star in the sky, but it's also, I believe, really this point where we invest a lot of our energy and drive into. Like, for example, for me with Chiron, the planet of the healing conjunct midheaven, I have spent most of my life healing people. Even if it was just the playmates in primary school, I was already a healer, and only after my awakening did I realize the process itself, but it was always there. So it's possible that what you are doing on this planet, you've been doing it always instinctively, intuitively, and you just didn't fully maybe realize or give it enough value. It doesn't even have to be what profession you're doing, because you can have 10 different teachers and they're all going to do the job differently. So what's important is your style, is the energy that you bring to people, is in what form do you uplift them, how do you contribute. And just asking yourself this question, honestly, if everyone in this world asked themselves this question, the world really would be just so much of a better place. So there you go. Step one in realizing that you have a mission. And a mission is not as simple as a homework. It's a style of being. It's a style of life. Definitely the first and the most important key piece of information in freeing yourself from the matrix. The other interesting point that the author here is making is that they're claiming that the soul enters the physical body during the 3rd month of pregnancy. Honestly, I have never really heard about that before, like this exact date. I never really concerned myself with it. But if any of you would like to know, this is an interesting piece of information, that they claim basically that the soul enters the body through the womb of the mother in the 3rd month of pregnancy. Interesting, like it's kind of irrelevant to what I'm talking about. It's just I just thought it was going to be an interesting tidbit of information. What's also interesting is that the phrasing that's being used, because the author says that the soul enters the body through an energetic code, and it kind of just made me think of a genetic code immediately. So that would mean that the genetic code that we all have is also an energetic code, but then the genetic code is passed down in a hereditary way. So this kind of is like a big, very complex mathematical puzzle of infinite planning, which is probably way above our human level, but nevertheless the concept is, interesting. So I just thought I would just, give it to you out there as a side note, something to think about. Very interesting. The other thing that is widely spoken about here is talking about how this reality, this physical reality, is a game. The author keeps calling this reality a game, which is kind of, when you think of a computer game, the point is that, you have stats, you have items, you have a goal to fulfill, which we just talked about. And the point is to finish the game with the best possible result, right? So I think it's very interesting, because if you play a game on a PC, you don't really treat it that seriously. Like, you may be really invested, but there is a part of you that realizes that this is a hologram, that this is in fact a game, that realizes that one day when the game is over, you're going to return to the source. And with this comes another step of liberation from the matrix, because it makes you realize that you're inherently safe. One of the things that we are very often attacked with in this world is the messages of fear, which is why I don't even turn on the TV or even have it plugged, because all that you hear is messages of fear. So I think that while that doesn't mean that you should abandon the game or not take it seriously, because since you decided to play it, then once you already play the game, then you're trying to make the best out of it. At least I, as a gamer, do that. Maybe I'm overachieving while gaming, but hey. Point is, there is a very big sense of freedom that you get from realizing the holographic quality of this physical reality. There are people who are just so hung up on thinking that this physicality, that this flesh is everything that exists, that they forget their own divinity and eternal consciousness. And calling this reality a game with a goal, just again, it's another step for freeing you, because it makes you realize the fact that everything here is an illusion, and that it's kind of more of an agreement, that's something that's really absolutely unquestionable. The only absolute is, like I said, your own sense of eternity and divinity, and we really tend to forget that while we're here. We just get so caught up in those small physical details, and we're supposed to be playing the game, so you need to concern yourself with them somehow, you have to take care of your body, feed it, sleep, and also look at things in the material world. But the thing is that even while doing that, it's important to not forget that this is a game, and this is another, like I said, very good way to free yourself from the matrix, by having a little bit of irreverence towards your life, because then even when you experience suffering, you understand what the stakes are. Like when you die in a game and you have to reload a save game, or when an enemy hits you, you don't necessarily quit the game immediately just because one opponent in a game hit you once. You try to keep beating them, or if the game just didn't go well, you reload and you try beating them over and over again until you conquer the obstacle. And I think it really just gives an inspiring level of faith, especially when you're going towards a hard time, because it makes you realize the bigger picture perspective, and it makes you kind of look at your life from a more tactical standpoint, which again frees your mind because it makes you detach yourself from your suffering even when it's very bad. And like, you might think that this comes easy to me, but you know, it was also very hard for me to look at my own suffering, which has been significant at moments. So you know, like, I'm here with you right now talking to you about this, but this video is like a process of years of contemplation and my own suffering and my own path to realizing what I'm talking about right now. So like I said, the point of this reality is a game or a hologram attitude is not to completely stop paying attention to it, but it's more like to understand that there is a certain degree of distance and there is a higher energy for you that you should remember that you always have within you. The article also talks about the hemispheres of the brain and how the right side is responsible for creativity, while the left side is responsible for logic. And the article strongly advises you to use your intuitive abilities to make the most important decisions in life, and how the system is oriented towards exercising solely your left brain hemisphere. Well, to you it looks like right because the camera is flipped, but this is my left. Point is, I always have found this very interesting because I'm naturally ambidextrous / left-handed, and when I was little, it was always encouraged in school that we use our right hand, which is why I can now use both. And very often people who are gifted or people who have some sort of talent, or people who are spiritual, they do train their left hand. And the reason for that is, like this article says, systemically, everything from computers to phones to tools to daily life, everything has been designed for people to use the right hand. Everything has been set up so that you exercise your logical left hemisphere more than the intuitive right hemisphere. And you know, this sounds kind of fatalistic and kind of conspiracy theory, but honestly, when you think about it, there are so few things set up for the left-handed people. I guess if you look for it, you can find left-handed pens, but that's honestly mostly for the kids who are still practicing writing at school. And like, finding objects for left-handed people for practicing your left hand, it has become more of a trend in the spiritual community online in the past couple of years. But this world is still not accommodated to left-handed people. This world encourages you to constantly keep using your left hemisphere, aka the right hand. Which, you know, it doesn't mean that this part of you is useless, because it exists for a reason. But the point is to overwork this hemisphere and to discourage you from using your intuition. Luckily, the brain is, you know, it's like a muscle, you can work it, and the more you use your right hemisphere, the more you use your intuition, the more it's going to be pronounced in your life. And I think in time you might even develop some more special gifts. Like, for example, my own intuition, even though I always had it, has developed significantly since I started training it, and so did my psychic abilities. So if I would talk about freeing oneself from the matrix, then another step, even if you are already born right-handed, is, even if you are right-handed yourself, to try to do some activities with your other hand to open up your mind, and maybe, you know, have a little bit of an extra experience in this department, and who knows what kind of talents you're going to develop. Like, you know, I'm not being fully serious about that, because this doesn't mean that you're going to like suddenly start flying or develop some supernatural hero abilities. But the point is that it's definitely a good exercise in just opening up another part of your brain that you don't normally use. Now, you know how at the beginning I said that I'm not going to agree with everything in this article? I guess that the article is kind of aggressive. It talks about how maybe it's just a translation issue, but not saying that it's not fully true, but it talks about vicious attacks of the system towards human beings. Like the line we have here literally is immediately after birth, the defenseless child is attacked by a system that we call the matrix, with a terrifying force that's supposed to block the child's brain, and especially the pineal gland and its intuition. Like, I'm not saying that this is not true, but I am not a very big fan of being very combative, because I believe that one of the best victories that you can have over something is by not acknowledging it at all. Like, if someone tries to punch you and you punch them back, you keep punching each other and no one gains anything from it. But if you just dodge and you get yourself out of the situation, or pretend that something is not even here, like me not turning on the TV instead of, smashing it, or like going to argue with with major network stations. I just don't turn it on, and so the problem doesn't exist for me. Now, you see my point, like everyone has a different attitude, but the tone of aggression in this article kind of bothered me, even though it's like so wonderful and such a great channel message, because I know there are some people who are very much into this spiritual warfare thing, but that's not really me. I kind of just believe that you should focus on developing your own positivity and finding your own center, and when you do that, when you focus on growing and developing yourself, you will automatically win just by being happy and by being successful. However, I think it's interesting to maybe observe how the system is trying to block the usage of intuition. So I would definitely consider starting, more developing your intuition more, knowing that some people view it as a valid resource that they're trying to effectively block away from you. And well, I can tell that personally, I myself, I can't imagine living without my intuition. Like, it just guides me so much, not only in bigger things, but also in small mundane things during the day. It's like having an extra arm that would be cut off from me. So I definitely encourage you to do that. I know that I'm not really including any tips on how to do it right now, but if, I'm planning on making a video on this in the future, and in the meantime, if you're impatient, there are many other videos on how to decalcify your pineal gland, unblock your pineal gland. You can just look for this information before I post it myself, and start at least appreciating your intuition today. In my opinion, the best experience is, like I said, just using it like a muscle, just closing your eyes and like trying to imagine that your right brain hemisphere is like your bicep, and you just really try to focus, and you can I honestly can kind of feel it right now. It's like an extension of my eye, and it's like winking, and I can do both. In fact, the right one responds slightly more in my case, but that's because I was always very right-brained. So I guess the hemisphere that's more active is going to respond better. Okay, so moving on to the next point. This is very interesting because, again, the article speaks about our own divinity and our own sovereignty, not in an ego-based way, not in a way that we trample on others, or that we are too ruled by our egos and our pride, but basically this speaks about the inherent divinity that every soul has. So basically it speaks about the divinity of us as a collective, but also the divinities of each individual and the inner brilliance that we all have, all in equal measure. And according to the article, through social conditioning, we are completely stripped of this divinity, of this sense of royalty, of spiritual royalty within us. Because it teaches us dependability on the system. It teaches us that we are dependent on the system. It makes us feel more stupid and less resourceful than we are. And it also doesn't encourage us to make our own decisions. It's like feel completely dependent on others and the system making decisions for them and making free thinking decisions. Like, think about how people shop when they go into a store. So many people don't even consciously think what they want from a store or what they're even consuming. They go in and grab the first thing from the shelf, which is like eating from the outstretched palm of the system. The system gave it here, you mindlessly take it. You don't make an autonomous consumer decision. People don't sit with themselves and ask themselves what they want. They get the nearest job available. They go to the nearest college that everyone goes to. This is the kind of decision making that I'm thinking in our daily lives. We don't ask ourselves what do we truly want, and we don't make sovereign decisions. But the point is not to make anyone feel guilty. The point is to say that this is how the Matrix trains you to be. It trains you not to ask yourself real scrutinizing questions, and it asks you to just blindly follow what is given to you. The next step here makes me very sad because I experienced it a lot personally, so the personal reading kind of just made it harder for me. But it speaks about how the child essentially gets punished for the moments when it tries to fight this oppression. And I find this very true because think of what happens to children in school that don't fit in. I was such a child, and because I thought differently, not only I was bullied by my peers who were themselves were victims of their own conditioning, poor them, but also for doing things differently. I was viewed as an authority issue by some adults, even though I was just simply refused to be talked down to, like it said in this article. Now that doesn't mean that the child needs guidance, but very often this guidance has very little with actual growth and more like with whipping and more like actually treating the child like a trained animal, trained monkey to just do exactly what we want it to do. And when the parents do that, they're not at fault because they are victims of the system and the Matrix themselves, and the circle goes on and on. So you can see how deeply rooted these programs are, and if you're a parent, you can see how important it is for you to encourage free thinking in your own child. Now, all these things that happen in childhood are basically called the preparation stage for being able to fully obey the matrix, because the point is that in the child stage we're very vulnerable, we're like a sponge, and so the child needs to at this stage completely deny them their own needs and themselves internally to be able to be shoved into the matrix. Otherwise the child would fight back and not agree to the systemic matrix oppression that attacks it from all sides. The other point of the program is to constantly repeat that you should be grateful to the system. So you should be grateful to the healthcare that gives you medication that poisons you. You should be grateful to the government that gives you scraps of money just so you can get barely by and never really let you fly. You should be grateful to the job that gives you just barely enough to survive, but not really enough to fully satisfy you. You see the kind of thinking that I'm about. It's giving you the illusion of something good. It's giving you the false sense of security by giving you scraps or things that are downright toxic for you and telling you that this is something that you should be grateful for. And because everyone does that, those who stand out naturally are ostracized, which makes it even worse. Now, the other problem also is that with those things, the system also tells us who we should be. So you are only defined as good enough as much as you fit into the system and what you should believe. Because if what you believe is outside the system, then you're an outcast, and no one talks about the universal divine love that connects us all, because there will be no benefit to that, and this would free all of us. The other interesting point the author makes is talking about how you are being told that you can't invent anything new because everything has already been done, and instead you should follow what already has been done. And that basically kills the entire creativity and invention of the process, because this is a message that we're subliminally attacked with so badly. Like, for example, someone could say that you should not become a YouTuber because there are so many YouTubers. And whatever subject you decide to speak on, there's probably someone else who already has done that. But the thing is that no one tells you that no one can quite do it exactly the way you do, which means that no matter who you are, you have something unique to contribute. And this is exactly the message that we're not hearing, that I'm telling you right now. You can thank me later. And honestly, it's very sad, because it kind of makes you feel like your life calling, your mission, the very thing that you're passionate about, is a waste of time, because the systemic thinking has trapped you so much into thinking that others have done it better, while you fail to recognize that literally every single person on earth has a unique contribution that only they can do, which basically stops you from fully going out and pursuing what you want yourself. And again, another way to break out of the matrix here would be to realize your unique contribution, and the moment you catch yourself thinking that others have done it and they have done it better, slap yourself and do it anyway. The other thing that the article talks about is the organizations that they say literally suck the life out of people. This is like kind of this demonic aspect that I don't fully like, but here they talk about pharmacies and churches and other systems that suck energy, time, health, and money out of people. Now, they say that basically these systems are used so that people do not take responsibility for their own health. Like, this is the extreme problem that I kind of have an issue with in this article, because, you know, if you break a leg and you don't know how to treat it, then you're going to have a problem, because your bones can just grow together badly. So, you know, if you broke a bone, go to the ER. But there is an inherent truth about it that, you know, there are people who are addicted to so much medication on the daily, and they think that they can survive without it. And this article basically calls it out as another way of the system oppressing you. And basically the appeal of following these systems is the fear of taking the responsibility for your own body and health. Now, coming back to the system, the matrix, and this organization, the author here speaks about how it's organized through a pyramidal structure, meaning that there are those who are on top of the system and those who are below and who serve it. They also divide the whole system on two parts, primary and secondary. Let me look for a reference. And the whole system is basically designed to keep the whole society in a state of what they call slavery. The author also here points out to the importance of bypassing both primary and secondary pyramids of the system. So basically, this is kind of what I said before, that it's best to act as if this doesn't exist by just completely skipping it. I guess this is what they call bypassing the system. Now, the sentence that I really like here, that's very nicely phrased, says, "The system tries to prevent you from bypassing them in all possible ways and puts obstacles in your way. Temptation and manipulative claims." Now, the example that is used is, for example, it offers you loans to make you a slave to money and having to pay it back. Well, I completely agree with the do not take loans policy, but notice how the whole system is designed, how, for example, for young people, you are unable to buy a house or an apartment, or basically have a place to live, because you have to take a loan to be even able to afford it, because the salaries are too low for you to be able to buy the apartment without a loan. Notice how it's all designed to keep you like this. Like, I think this just really fits how the financial system is organized with those numbers that after all they are a social contract. You know, back in the days when it came to money, primarily money was measured with its weight in gold. Right now money has become completely fictional. It's air. It's a social construct. It's not something that you can really feel in your hands. And the system uses this by, like I said, for example, pricing real estate so high that a person with an average job never is able to get it. The purpose, again, for this exercise, for having to take loans, so you have to make money by making jobs that take your time, is to steal your time so you don't get an opportunity to fulfill your true mission and find the reason you were born here. Because the abundance of time for people is a pure poison for the system. Now, I love this phrase so much. I admit this was one of the things that really drew me to this article, because if you go to my channel and if you go to my Peace of Mind playlist, you will find a video entitled Is Your Job Your Work?, where I talk about my own work experience and where I called work the soul mission. I call it soul work, which is exactly what this article says, which is why when I read it, I was so happy that both me and this channeler had such similar conclusions. And having worked in the normal world, I have come to exactly the same conclusion, that all these are traps designed to stop you from fulfilling your true mission. Well, according to them, it's part of a whole bigger system. Take it however you want. Interestingly enough, they talk not only about job, but they also talk about hobbies. They also think that many hobbies that people pursue nowadays are also a waste of time to deter you from fulfilling your true mission, which I find to be very interesting, because, you know, essentially there's nothing wrong with pursuing sports, exercising your body, and having an interest, but this basically shows how many of those pursuits are actually shallow and only putting us away from our true life goal. So, and again, another way to free yourself from the matrix is examine your job and examine your hobbies, and with that, the people that you surround yourself with. Now, the next part of the article I'm going to skip a little bit because it gets into the concepts of angels and demons, which I don't want to even start in this video, because I know there are people who have very individual opinions on that, and I want to focus on the more practical. So here we're going to talk about the primary level of the system, which is enumerated in this article, and let me read here for you. So, churches, governments, police, courts, schools, laws, offices, soldiers, and all the authorities that control and limit humanity. So basically, it's very important to live your life in such a way that you somehow bypass all of those. So it's interesting that even schools are called like that, because this reminds me of my own university experience, because I got a degree, and it reminds me how really hard it was to get my degree, how it felt like it was painful for my soul to squeeze through it. And well, I guess that the reason for that is that it is yet another way to be imprisoned by the matrix. So I guess if you want to take another step to free yourself from the matrix, is to avoid all those organizations, and you can get plenty of education on your own. Like, I learned the entirety of astrology and tarot over years, which has already made me help so many people without ever going to an astrology school, because there are many books by other gifted individuals that are available for a low price or for free online. There is so much material, plus my own intuition that has allowed me to already channel and help so many people without paying for any school. Take it as you want, but basically this article recommends you to avoid all these organizations whatsoever. Now, the secondary level of the pyramid is designed to catch all those that have not been caught by the first level of the pyramid. Now, the elements of this are, let me read, is poisonous food, capture all people who never get caught in clutches of money and loans, and never allow their time to be stolen. The body starts to fade after unhealthy food, and the mind will deteriorate, and you will have to see a doctor. And then we have the gigantic pharmaceutical apparatus with all its hubs in the forms of doctors and poisonous pills. And then there's a very interesting quote that every man is responsible for his body and must never put it in the hands of someone else. Now, again, this thing, like I said, if I broke a bone, I wouldn't know how to put it together. So if there really is this sort of emergency, then I'm not advising you to put together your broken bones at home, God forbid. But especially given what's happening recently in the world all around, I think that this is more and more up to date. So if you wanted to sum it up, the other way to bypass the matrix is be careful what you're eating, don't take any medication whatsoever, and don't surrender your body without necessity to the control of the system. Try to take care of it yourself, hopefully with herbal medicine, and really watch what you consume. The other problem with the system is that it makes healthier foods often either expensive or difficult to access, which I find very sad. but it is possible, and I've done it while coming from a very poor family my whole life. So do what you can do. If you want to see more about the healthy consumption process, there is a video that I made recently that you can also find on my channel on my peace of mind list, that I will also link somewhere, about how I became a conscious consumer, and I think that this really fits nicely into this. The last piece of advice in the article that talks about how to escape the matrix, I'm going to quote directly because it's very well written, but it says, "According to the laws of the universe, you must not restrict another person, neither his free will, and must not intentionally hurt them, either physically or mentally. If you have violated this law, not only in your personal life but also in the exercise of your vocation, you have become a being that acts destructively, and there's nothing good waiting for you." This is the negative fatalistic part, but this basically speaks about the importance of doing right, not only in your personal life but also in your professional life, and never obstructing or limiting anyone. So the other way to free yourself from the matrix here would be really examining your job, like I said, but also the energy you send both in your personal and your professional life. This is not an easy question to answer, because there can be those who practice law and use it to free people, and there can be those who practice law to oppress them. So it's not even about changing your entire life, because you may be doing something good, but it's more about looking at the intention with which you're practicing what you're practicing. So another good piece of advice here. Now this concludes all the points as to how to beat the matrix according to the article. I'm going to link the original article below, so if you're into the whole theories with angels and devils and this stuff, you can see that it's included in this article, and you can see the original down there. But now I'm going to talk about another interesting point that is here, and this is the reason why the matrix was created according to the article. So I'm not going to get into the whole story that's presented there, because it's very out there, and I want to make this video simple for those who may be even new to spirituality. But what you can deduct from this article is that the reason why the matrix even exists is because it's built on the yin and yang principle, which basically means that in the higher dimensions of the universe, there are forces that want to explore themselves through polarization. So the oppressing system has to exist so that there can be freedom with it. When there is freedom, there needs to be oppression as a contrast to it. Two opposing forces need to collide to create tension, to create energy, so that life can continue. So basically, this is why the whole systemic thing is called a game. That doesn't mean that you making the right choices is less important, because it's extremely imperative. However, it explains that this whole thing, the matrix, was not designed for us as a cruel joke, but in fact it's kind of a factory, a grinding mechanism for you to continuously keep making good choices even when faced with obstacles. Because if there was nothing but good, you would not know the difference between making a good or a bad choice, would you? So I guess this answers the old question of why the matrix was even created. According to me, the point is to lead us to evolution. And the evolution happens through persistently choosing the good option, even through all your obstacles. Now, what we can take from this article, especially if you have read all of it, you will see the mind-blowing perspective that the article offers. What we can take is the absolutely imperative value of living as a free-thinking being in everything that you do, the small things in your daily life and big projects equally. It's imperative to really sit down with yourself and ask yourself the truth of the universe and your own being, which are one and the same. So if you want a quick answer, a quick sum up of how to free yourself from the matrix, the answer would be with the truth of life, the truth of your being, and the inner authentic place in yourself. Very sadly, like the article says, there are many things in this life that arrive at us also from our close ones, who themselves are victims, that attack us all the time, that make the process difficult, which is why a job of a person such as me and many other spiritual coaches that spread enlightenment through social media nowadays is so important. And also the other reason is to realize your own importance in the whole grand scheme of the universe, how every individual is equal and unique, and how absolutely everybody has the possibility to reach their own point of inner authenticity and to manifest it in this physical reality. And also, again, what's important is to realize the holographic quality of our reality, how there's just so much more beyond it, and how much we can do simply by offering our hearts, which is what I do every time that I film for you guys. To me, this is just so important that all of you can achieve what's written in this article, what I also personally believe in, which is why I'm even quoting it, because I agree with the message of freedom that is being given to all of you here. And I hope for it, and I will work for it to reach as many people as possible for their own freedom and enlightenment. Between the lines, the article also talks about a very important thing is not to let others dissuade you. Because when you are on this kind of journey where you free yourself from all the systemic oppressions, immediately you're attacked with people telling you that you are unrealistic, stupid, and impractical, and all the other insults that we call people who simply decide to follow their hearts and listen to their inner truth. Or my favorite one, crazy. Now, it is very important that you do not listen to these kind of messages, because when someone tells you to look at the reality, they're telling you to be a slave of the matrix. But the reality always is that you are a free sovereign being. And this is not something that should or can be taken away from you if you don't allow it. Now, I understand that this might feel uncomfortable to you, especially at the beginning, but as someone who has been on a journey of awakening for years now, who has transitioned from someone who has been operating almost entirely inside the matrix towards someone who has been free to a large extent, if not fully, because this is, journey for a lifetime, I can tell you that it's worth it, and the benefits, the spiritual benefits, the feeling of lightness, truth, and openness, and the lack of negative feelings also are more rewarding. Thank you very much for staying with me till the end of this video. Please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more spiritual content. You can find my tarot readings, my astrology readings, and other peace of mind videos where I speak about other spiritual topics. Like I said, you can also order a private reading with me through my Etsy shop, or just by contacting me on my email address. I wish you luck on your spiritual journey, and I send you the energy that I have acquired myself to help you. And I hope that by listening to my messages, you will become a happier, freer person. See you guys. Bye.